Good evening and welcome. It's Wednesday, August 7th, 2024. It's a regular meeting of the Pacific Grove City Council. I'll call the meeting to order. Note that all council members are present and Councilmember Pedori.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to hear a motion to approve the agenda plus a very brief recess right after general comment. We've got a request from the League of California Cities to take group photo. And so if agreeable, we'll just step out into the courtyard right after general comment, get a photo and come back. It's okay?
It's okay. I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Pyrrhic, any announcements?
Yes, we had a closed session earlier today and in the Audi lawsuit, and there is no reportable action.
Thank you, Mr. Mogensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of quick things to let you know about. The first one is that on August 19th, we will have a new library director will be starting for us. Her name is Rachel Gaither, and she is coming to us most recently from the city of Carmel, but she did a stint here in the city of Pacific Grove, and through 2019, she was our senior librarian. Since then, she's gone off and got a bunch of more experience and is excited to be back. So we're looking forward to her coming back on board. The other thing we wanted to update the council and community on is some expanded hours on the pool schedule. So I'll kick that over to Director Go.
Thank you, Mayor Peak, members of the city council, members of the audience, city staff. It's my pleasure to announce that we're going to keep the pool open through August, and it's anticipated through September and into October on Saturdays moving forward. We started last Saturday with just rec swim. We'll continue that this Saturday, and then again on the 17th, 24th, and the 31st through August. $3 for non-residents, $2 for residents, cash at the door. And we had a really successful swim lesson program. So we're excited that we were able to keep some staff on board and continue with open swim. So just wanted to make that announcement. Thank you.
Thank you. Council member announcements? Well, I'll announce if maybe any people haven't heard, but Car Week is next week and it's coming to Pacific Grove as well. And Tuesday, Downtown Classic Motorsports, Wednesday, the little car show, and Friday, the PG Rotary will be hosting a auto rally. So hope to see you down there. Right. On to general public comment. Please come forward if you wish to speak. Podium's on your right. Welcome.
Thank you. Is this on?
Yes, if the light is off,
Oh, it's
the
on.
microphone
Okay.
is on.
All right, thank you. So good evening, Carmelita Garcia, Pacific Grove resident. And thank you all for your service. So I want to give a big shout out to last night's event, National Night Out. It was a lot of fun. There were a lot of vendors there, and it was great to see all the different departments with all the types of equipment that they use in responding. My big takeaway was talking to the staff from Montage and getting a real thorough explanation about the use of Narcan. And so I feel confident that if the occasion ever arose, that I would be able to administer Narcan appropriately. So I'm very thankful that they were there. So yeah, Car Week is coming up. And so what I would like to say is to plan accordingly. If you plan to drive your car outside of Pacific Grove, traffic is already very heavy, and having experienced it firsthand, some of the drivers aren't really polite. So you need to be very patient. And while the event is wonderful and is a great opportunity to grow economically, we do want visitors to enjoy the event and their stay here in Pacific Grove. Having said that, the law still needs to be adhered to. So I would ask everybody and anybody to please adhere to the speed limits, and to our local police department. If you should desire not to cite for speeding, to please at least pull over individuals and give them a warning so that they can continue to enjoy their stay here in Pacific Grove without it being ruined by a speeding ticket. And finally, fawning season has ended. So please, everybody, watch for the deer. And the fawns are growing and they're getting out in the public more and more. And please keep in mind that if you see one deer, there are more around. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, I'm Jane Haynes. Several weeks ago, I said to you that Pacific Grove wasn't living up to its adopted standard value of transparency. I no longer think that. On tonight's agenda is a proposal for complete transparency for when this council accepts reports from advisory committees. I am very happy about it and grateful, and I want to thank you. Now I want to talk about the council's adopted value of respect. The city's website says we cultivate an environment of trust and respect for all residents and visitors alike. I want to tell you about a scientist who retired to Pacific Grove after authoring 63 peer-reviewed scientific studies. He was a postdoctoral scholar in biological sciences at Stanford University. In 2020, he installed in the sanctuary, Butterfly Sanctuary, wind measuring instruments he had purchased with his own money. He collected on-site data almost daily. And on March 15, 2021, at 7:51 p.m., he emailed this email and a 20-some page report about the data he collected on site at the sanctuary. The following morning at 8:30 a.m., 11 hours later, a staff member sent an email to the Public Works Director stating that he had prepared talking points for that evening's BNRC meeting. There were 6 talking points that on the reverse side of this all disparaged the scientist report. One states, this weather station is of hobbyist enthusiast quality and is not maintained or calibrated in the same way as the NOAA weather stations commonly used for scientific monitoring. I obtained the talking points through a public records request, and I showed them to the scientist. He told me that the city has never thanked him for his 2 years of work and investment. That is not respect. So I hope that your council will request the city manager to apologize to that scientist and thank him for what he did for Pacific Grove. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Daniel Miller. Since the butterfly sanctuary was just brought up, I was over there a couple days ago, and the disrepair that is over there right now is absolutely incredible. There is eucalyptus, shavings, whatever you want to call them, sheddings that are a foot deep in places. And as anybody knows, eucalyptus is like the hottest burning material there is. You want something to go up quick, and you want the neighborhood to go up quick. That would be literally a recipe for disaster right now in the Monarch Grove Sanctuary. And why nobody goes in there and is tasked with cleaning it up as of Monday. I mean, if it's been done in the past 48 hours, I'd be surprised. Though they did where somebody crashed into the entrance. Somebody did, and I think about a week ago, they crashed in. Monday, there was yellow caution tape around it. That's how too often we fix things in Pacific Grove, is with yellow caution tape till we get around to it months and sometimes years later. So if somebody could get down and clean the debris out of the Monarch Grove Sanctuary, it would be a wonderful thing going forward. And people still go there even though the monarchs aren't there. And the shape it's in right now is incredible disrepair. Also, the little chapel over at the cemetery, since Paul Mortuary pulled out of there using the place for their cremation, I don't think weeds have been cut there. And that's been like a year and a half, 2 years. And there's weeds this high in the driveway, all around it. This has to stop, this just taken for granted of buildings and grounds that we have in Pacific Grove, as if they're going to take care of themselves, or volunteers are going to swoop down and do it. So if we could be a little more diligent about that, it'd be nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. And I'm here because unfortunately, sometimes I miss a meeting, and I miss the meeting about something that's dear to my heart in a negative way. And that's this vote that you recently took on producing a roundabout at the intersection of Congress and Sunset by the PG High School, where the Mission Linen used to be. I think this is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever seen you pass. I know there was a lot of entreatment from outside people who don't live in Pacific Grove, like TAMC, we call them TAMC, Transportation Authority of Monterey County. And another one involved with them that Mr. Pedori is very well familiar with, Smart Growth America. If you haven't heard of Smart Growth America, I had to look them up on the internet. They're involved with TAMC and Mr. Pedori, promoting programs that are going to elicit an anti-climate change effect on the world, on the community. Do you know how much pollution, how much air pollution is produced by the United States on a worldwide basis compared to China? China produces estimated 30% of the world's pollution, air pollution. The United States is down at 14. Okay, they're number 2. But think about this. How much of an influence is Pacific Grove building a roundabout up by the high school going to have on the effect of the entire world, even the communities, climate change? And the safety issue is ridiculous. The roundabout up at the top of Highway 1, where Highway 68 joins up there, we all drive through there. That used to be a nightmare with the traffic light. It was a great facilitated project because of the amount of traffic and the lack of pedestrians. How many of you have ever had to stop for a pedestrian crossing the roundabout? Hold up your hands. No hands are going up, are they? Because there are no pedestrians up there. But take a look at the high school and the middle and the elementary school over there. You're going to put a roundabout? Leave it alone. You already passed it, but I'm just disgusted. I had to get up here and put my 2 cents in. There's no reason to change that intersection. What, because one guy had an accident 3 years ago? This is the motivation? I don't remember any children being run down. And wait till you see people speeding up to go around that roundabout. Anyway, I'm really surprised, and I want to particularly blame Mr. Pedori for being involved with TAMSI, who's promoting this as another one of their projects that they need to justify and sustain their existence. If they don't come up with these ridiculous projects, you ever go out to North Fremont Street? See that elevated bicycle lane that goes past CVS? Wasn't that a good investment of multiple millions of dollars? How about this bus traffic lane that they want to put in along the highway in the Fort Ord Dunes? You think there's a lot of people going to ride from Marina to Seaside on that bus route? Please, anything gets involved with
you.
TAMSI is ridiculous. Thank you.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Steve Lightfoot here. I'm the guy with the John Lennon written about John Lennon's murder, LennonMurderTruth.com. Every Sunday I'm over there at downtown Alvarado, Monterey, doing my rally at 12 o'clock noon. After March 1st, which is about 7 months away, I haven't got a rise out of Santa Cruz and Monterey. I'll be moving permanently out of California to Utah, where normal people live and will actually care about who killed John Lennon. The website is LennonMurderTruth.com. No news bigger, everybody's business. LennonMurderTruth.com. This is the biggest news on planet Earth, bar none. This is the expose of all time and the biggest news since Christ. Doubt me? Maybe another story out there that has the potential to change the world more than this one. There are none. Imagine the difference that will occur after Stephen King is wrestled from his mansion, arrested, charged, tried, and executed on a gurney with fentanyl. Can't imagine that. The way that you wake up and smell your calming nightmare. It's real, it's ugly. And so are all of you until Stephen King is executed, and all of us are exorcised from the evil he and his Kremlin associates caused. Once I am born forward, you will have a new John Lennon to save you with. Someone famous and influential enough to trump all politics and governments like John used to do. You will have the most important element of any society, a hero for a change. Oh yeah, I can sing and write with the best. And I will if you deserve me and bring me forward before your collective apathy and stupidity gets me killed. It's as if you all have a collective national death wish and lack the guts to fight back. If you take much longer, I may stiff you all and with all my talents and let you rot in hell on earth. I'm already pissed off at how stupid you have all been for so long. Come March 1st, 2025, if Monterey hasn't pulled its collective finger out of its ass and demonstrated to help me, I leave my home state of California for good and move to Utah where normal people live and might actually help me protest. And then I could go on here, but I just want to say, I demonstrate almost every Sunday at noon in downtown Monterey on Alvarado Street. Just look for my fresh tone pink website, LennonMurderTruth.com van, and I'll be there. If you don't show by 12:30, I'll assume we're all too stupid to kill and leave. America should turn out in thousands if you weren't so calm already. Wake the F up, people. You don't deserve, nor can you afford to be treated politely right now. You want me to swift kicking your apathetic asses. I wish I could just slap you silly and wake you all up if I could. I don't do Twitter and Facebook and TikTok or TikTok or any other social media than my website. If you want to take an off them to avoid it, good luck. I'm only here to find me. No amount of excuses will save California.
Time is up.
Give me just 10 seconds. If they try to say they didn't understand, my website is so clear a child can see it. Stephen King is his last.
Sir, your time is up.
It's been available and advertised
you.
all over the place for over 20 years now. Thank you.
Coming after that, Terrence Zito, Pacific Grove. Mr. Coletti, I saw you maintain control, but just barely on that one. Good job. I'm talking about I want to talk about the roundabout boondoggle today, but I'm going to take a slightly different approach to this. The 4 people that voted for it, you got your own problems. 2 of you are facing reelection, and you're going to be tagged with this, Mr. Podori especially, because this is your baby. Showing you really don't know how to marshal taxpayer money and get good value for money. It's totally ridiculous. But I want to talk to the 3 smart people in the room and on the dais who voted against it, and give you a little bit of a story. I'll keep it brief. I don't want to bore you. But when I was a council member, I was outvoted 6-1 on the fast food. The council was hell bent on getting injecting fast food into Pacific Grove. You know how great that would have been. And I didn't accept that. And I worked and I worked and I worked with the citizens, and I turned it around, and we voted down fast food, and I produced an ordinance which has protected this town since the 90s against fast food. And I want to talk to the people that voted against this intersection boondoggle, this roundabout. There was only 1 of me, but there's 3 of you. And I would urge you to work together and work with the citizens and do your own research, because I find a lot of times there's some good staff, but there's a lot of staff, they seem to have vested interests in not having the citizens' best interests at heart. And I think they're kind of, working with TAMC, and TAMC's working with that woke group, to do the roundabout is for climate change. What a bunch of hogwash. So I'm urging you to do your own research, not depend on the staff, because my thought about the staff was they can control you by what they present to you and what they keep away from you. And so you have to do your own research, work together and defeat this idiotic scheme. I'm not inherently against roundabouts, but in this neighborhood, I mean, this is overkill. This doesn't make any sense, and we can't afford it. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Beth Schmoss. I too want to talk about the roundabout, but I just want to talk about what we can do right now. I live at just a few houses up from that intersection. So I do see all of the school kids and older people too. And there's the apartments on Sunset. There's a lot of foot traffic, maybe more than you would realize if you're just going through there. And so my concern is the roundabout, whether it happens or not, it's not going to happen this year. So would the council consider directing Public Works to do something to highlight safety at that intersection, either more dramatic crosswalk paintings or whatever is possible? Because right now there's really, it's pretty faded. There's a little sign, little 3-foot sign about pedestrian crossings that's been knocked over about 4 times. So now it's just propped up. But so anyway, if the council would consider that, I would be appreciative. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Raymond Stagey, and I'm here to bring to your attention a critical and largely unknown issue: domestically funded child trafficking facilitated through orphanage volunteerism. Recently, my partner Barack Laub and I produced a documentary that exposes how well-intentioned volunteer trips to orphanages abroad can inadvertently support a cycle of exploitation and trafficking. Many of these orphanages receive funding and volunteers from compassionate donors and organizations here in the United States, which unfortunately incentivizes in trafficking and institutionalization of children who are often not orphans. It's estimated that between 5 and 8 million children are living in institutions, with 80% that have at least one living parent. Both the United States and the state of California currently lack legislation to protect children abroad and to combat domestically funded child trafficking. Last November, Carmel by the Sea passed a proclamation addressing this problem, and more recently, the city of Marina did the same. To further raise awareness, we are hosting a free screening of our documentary at the Creperie Cafe in Seaside on August 14th at 5:30. We invite all of you to attend and learn more about this urgent issue. Today, we're asking for your support to join these cities in condemning orphanage volunteerism and its link to child trafficking. By passing a similar proclamation, we can educate our community, reduce demand for unethical orphanage tourism, and advocate for stronger protections and for vulnerable children. Moreover, we believe these local proclamations will galvanize the state of California to create legislation that will protect children and combat child trafficking. Your support can make a significant impact in stopping this cycle of exploitation and ensure that our community does not contribute to such harmful practices. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anyone else? Please come forward. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Christine Gruber, and I'm reading that. It's sad. I am with the Youth Ambassadors of Pacific Grove, and we just had our second PG Summer Lights on July 27th. And we wanted to say a huge thank you to the city. So many of you came down and made a point to say hello, and that was wonderful. But I also want to give a huge shout out from helping with permits and planning and getting trash, where it needs to go. I also want to, the youth ambassadors worked hard all day, but we had so many other people from you guys that worked hard. And I want to give a huge shout out to Katie Clark from, helping me get the maps that the fire and police department needed. And then also to Martin Gonzalez. When Rocky retired, we were like, oh boy, who's going to step in and help us? Because Rocky knows it all and was wonderful for us last year. And let me tell you, Martin was amazing this year. And so I just wanted to say thank you for believing in us and letting us continue to hopefully bring the summer to a happy end for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. It was an awesome event. Thank you to all the ambassadors and the staff for making it happen. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi there, my name is Claire Clausen. I'm going into my senior year at Pacific Grove High School, and I've been in Youth Ambassadors for 3 years. And I'd like to say thank you all because Summer Lights went so well, and I hope you guys all support us as we continue to grow, because being in this program so far has helped me improve my public speaking to come up here and do all this. And the program has really brightened my life and given me something to be passionate about, like practice my skills. And working at Summer Lights, planning Summer Lights, it's all been such an amazing experience that I can already feel that it's improved me in so many ways. So I hope you guys can continue to support Youth Ambassadors as we grow, because it really is an amazing program. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Hello, my name is BG Shelby, and I'm here to address an issue I've seen with the roads. I haven't lived in Pacific Grove for very long, but where my family is renting on 16th Street, I see a lot of people turning the wrong way from Union because there isn't a sign that says one way. It causes a lot of embarrassment from the drivers, and I think it needs to be. I think there needs to be a sign on Union and 16th because there's a lot of people who have been going the wrong direction, and that can cause problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello, Mayor and Council. Wanted to say I really enjoyed the Festival of Lights. I didn't know what to expect. We had gone back and forth about, is it going to be too much noise? Is it going to be troublesome to the wildlife? And it was so well done. And the interchange where concerns were aired and then they were addressed was just really beautifully done and well played. So I want to say thank you very much to all who did that. And then the other thing I wanted to address is the speeding, especially with Car Week coming up. I live between Gibson and Cynics, and those streets can turn into raceways anyway. And then I hear all the traffic on David Avenue. And I heard a rumor that Monterey and PG don't issue tickets during that week because we don't want to offend anyone who might be coming and wanting to have a good tourist experience. And that's fine, but I I would really appreciate you encouraging the officers to stop people and at least give a warning or talk with them because the speeding is kind of getting out of control during this event. Thank you.
Thank you. Any virtual public comment?
See no hands raised, Mayor.
At the risk of putting our city manager and commander on the spot, I find it hard to believe that there's no speeding tickets issued during car week. Care to comment on that?
I think I'll try and stretch out a minute here while he gets up to the microphone, but I think, yeah, Commander Anderson would be the best one to address that. I know they've been coordinating with all the local police departments recently.
Obviously, we encourage every interaction to start with a conversation. And, we always emphasize education. However, no, there is no standing request, order, or otherwise not to issue a citation. And in fact, the peninsula-wide stop program, which just focuses on traffic, actually will be in our neighboring cities over the weekend, specifically doing traffic enforcement. So I'm pretty confident that our officers will be out there, and anybody that needs any type of reminder about the traffic laws will be out there doing so.
Thank you. We certainly hope all our tourists obey our laws. Thank you very much. Okay, that ends general public comment. Photo. We'll take a brief recess to the courtyard.
Recording stopped.
I don't know anything about it. Yeah.
Recording in progress.
Okay. We're now on to the consent agenda. Anyone on council wishing to pull a consent agenda item? Nine D as in dog. Okay. All right. Any others? All right. Anyone from the public wishing to pull a consent agenda item? We've already pulled tree maintenance services agreement 9D. Okay,
Nobody online there.
seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the modified agenda?
So moved, Your Honor. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. All right, let's move on to item 9D, tree maintenance services agreement. Should we start with public? Because we've had a few members of the public have some questions. So why don't we start with that? Anyone from the public wishing to speak to this item? Please come forward. Welcome.
What?
It's good now.
That's good, thank you. To not accept this agreement that staff is recommending without questioning staff and seeing if you can change it. The first reason is that this is just too much money. We started seeing the effects of climate change in the really intense winter storms we've been having a few years ago, right? And so the trees that had just gone through 12 years or so of drought toppled, and there was an intense need for emergency services. Now there is not. The trees have toppled. We saw a lot fewer last year, and to maximize the amount of money is just a waste of money. And what it's going to do is, because you know they're going to spend the money that they're given annually, is it's just going to create a lot of over trimming and probably damage to the urban forest. So I don't think that that amount of money should be given, because it's just a like cost of living allowance over what they've been given when there were a lot more trees to deal with. The second reason I'm not that pleased with this contract is that it's Topes, and Topes is known as the butchers. And the reason they're known as the butchers is because they can, when they go to respond to emergencies fast, the reason they get there so fast is because they've hired a lot of unskilled laborers who don't know how to trim trees. And so they get there fast, but then they don't do a very good job. I'm sure the people in charge know how to do a really good job, but they're either not there or they're there for like 5 minutes at the beginning. And that's pretty typical. So I don't want these people taking care of our trees. The third reason is there's some kind of nepotism going on. I'm not sure what it is, but Topes is related to either Al Weisfuss or they're related to somebody. I can't remember who. And that's a bias. That's not a healthy relationship. And I'd like to see really instead a contract for an emergency services be awarded during the months of like November to March, when we're having the winter storms, when we're going to need emergency services like that. And during the other 6 months of the year, ask staff to reach out to other services so that we get to know other services and get to know their quality. And I don't think that's an unreasonable ask, given the myriad of different services that are available. I want to also remind you that I came last year when Topes' contract was up for renewal, and I pointed out a tree at the tennis courts that they had butchered, quote unquote. And you were assured that, oh, it's going to leaf out again. No, if you go by the tennis courts, it's now, yes, where the leaves were left, there's a little bit more, but the way it was trimmed, it still looks like the proverbial Dr. Seuss tree. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. Carmelita Garcia, Pacific Grove resident. Couple of comments. I agree with the email and concerns expressed by Ms. Gorman that she did send. Also, under the paragraph, next steps, it says, by approving this agreement with extension options, the city can lock in the competitive pricing from the 2024 proposal, which helps keep costs stable. If the city were to release a new call for bids every year, it would likely lead to increased pricing annually. Well, I don't have to remind you that one of your responsibilities is due diligence. And cost should really not be a factor. That's your responsibility. Um, I also feel strongly that the city needs to stop these multi-year agreements. And an example of that is waste management. You know, we're locked in for over a decade of an agreement that has zero power for renegotiations and what have you. Finally, when the comment about upon thorough review of the proposals, I'm wondering who did the thorough review? What did that look like? Who was involved? And perhaps there should be a committee of a few, not necessarily comprised of all staff, but maybe community members and what have you to do review of the bids when they come in. But I encourage you not to approve this. I think there's something better out there. And so we just kind of need to shake things up. And I'll end with a final comment that, you know, elections are right around the corner. So I don't think future council members should be committed to agreements that they really have had no participation in the decision-making process. So thank you.
Thank you. Online, virtual.
Yes, Mayor Inga Lawrence and Joymer.
Thank you. Mayor and City Council, I'm going to very much agree with both speakers before me and remind you that taupes are butchers of trees and that locking us in and what happened with Chauvin? You know, our auditors, we needed to shake that up. Well, we need to shake this one up because we are paying too much for unskilled labor. Maybe they have them at the top, but they aren't there in the workers that come out and butcher the trees. And as was said, maybe the person who knows something comes out and directs them and then goes off. And what the end result is not good. And it is like waste management, locked into a contract that you can't. I would rather see us really explore something else, because just because everybody else uses them and everybody else said, oh, they are so experienced, I'm not sure. They just are very top heavy and the workers don't know what they're doing. So I would suggest that you do not approve this contract tonight. Put it out to bid again, a little more specific, and not just accept the most generalized, oh, we can do this, we do it all over kind of thing. They don't look at our trees. I wish you would understand that locking into these are not cost effective. And the other speakers were very nice about it. And yes, I'm not as nice about it, but we have brought this up and brought this up, and it's time to not just award it tonight. Thank you very much.
Christine Walking Stick.
Hi, good evening. This is Christine Walking Stick. I am the chair of the BNRC, speaking on behalf of myself. I'm asking to have you deny Taupes tree service maintenance agreement and think about forging a new way forward by contracting emergency tree services with West Coast Arborist. The city of Pacific Grove is contracted with Taupes tree service since 2014. And within the past decade, we've seen the continued decline of PG's tree health and reduction of canopy due to mismanagement, to which compromises the safety of the forest itself and the life that lives within it. If a tree is mismanaged, that's pruned incorrectly, mechanically damaged, indiscriminately removed, it not only affects the individual tree's health, it affects the health of the entire forest. So this kind of mismanagement will result in trees and limbs falling unnecessarily during adverse weather conditions and randomly at any time. TOPS has been a large part of this mismanagement of Pacific Grove's trees, and it's time to explore a new way of operations with a more experienced tree service, such as West Coast arborists. I personally witnessed our own public works staff carefully work with trees in George Washington Park this spring, trimming perimeter trees. They have knowledge of stump removal and close proximity communications with both our arborist and public works director. We can see that with an amount of organization, our own staff has the capacity to administer basic tree maintenance. And then the excitement and motivation from volunteers to assist in tree plantings and watering shows community desire to help, as shown at the Arbor Day tree planting event in George Washington Park, where 30+ volunteers came out to enthusiastically participate. So with all things mentioned, a contracted tree service would only be needed for emergency purposes, possibly. A new tree service like West Coast Arborist, who cares for our urban forest the way we as citizens of Pacific Grove deserve and desire, is necessary. So continuing this vision into the future, the education and expertise of a qualified forest manager with the correlating forest management staffed department will streamline tree services and optimize city personnel with the much needed maintenance, care, health, and safety for our urban forest, along with the safety of all of us who live amongst the trees. Thank you for this consideration.
Jen Gorman.
Good evening. Thank you very much for pulling the item tonight so that it can be discussed and reviewed at length. I do appreciate that. I do agree that with the sentiment of every speaker before me. I think the largest concern, one, is that it's TOPS. Most of us residents are not pleased with the results that we see, the deterioration of our tree canopy over the years under their care. But another, large issue we should be considering is, of course, this $250,000 contract that apparently could be renewed for 4 years without, I think, even coming before the council again, if I understand that correctly. So I do urge you to not approve this and to move forward with some of the options that have been discussed and that I've mentioned in my written comments, whether that's rebidding it, whether that's waiting until we do have a city forester to actually issue and solicit for bids and evaluate them. I liked Ms. Garcia's idea of having others evaluate them to avoid biases and just continuing to go status quo. So thank you again for your time tonight, and I hope you will reconsider.
No further hands, Mayor.
But we start off, well, common theme from a lot of the public speakers was about the scope of work or work direction and the quality of the work performed by TOPS. Mr. Mogensen, could you address that?
Trying to gather my thoughts really quickly. I don't know that I'm the best person to ask about the quality of work entirely, and I'd probably put that over, if I could, to our public works staff who are ready to talk about that. I will say that in just making sure everybody's aware that we did publish an errata for this item tonight, that we added in all of the bidder's proposal information into a matrix that was used to select the consultant that's been brought forward to you tonight. So just so everybody has that information in front of them as you're talking through this. But with that, I will ask Ms. Hoiby.
Thank you, City Manager and Mr. Mayor, to answer some of the questions that have arisen as it relates to how the tree service contractor is directed to perform work. They're directed through our city arborist. So our city arborist provides them with work tasks. They go out and do that. The arborist also monitors the work being performed. He reviews the invoicing to ensure that the work complies, or the invoicing complies with the work that was actually performed. I want to note that in terms of the quality of work, Topes has been a great partner to the city for the years that they have been providing this service. They also provide this service to other municipalities locally, City of Carmel, City of Monterey, and the County of Monterey, who all also have very high tree standards. Their staff has a variety of different certificates, which I would again draw your attention to the errata that lists that, but they have ISA certified arborists, certified master arborists, certified tree workers, qualified tree risk assessors, tree care safety professionals, certified tree worker climber specialists, they're aerial lift certified. They have all sorts of certifications that provide them the knowledge and the ability to do the work to the ANSI standards, the city's urban forestry standards, and in compliance with our municipal code. And they're also very familiar with those things since they've done a tremendous amount of work here with the city. I do want to note that proposal also states that they do a tremendous amount of in-house training as it relates to the ISA standards, and that they have a ISA site certified site supervisor or foreman on site for their projects. They have many, again, certified arborists, and they actually have 2 folks that are currently in the process of becoming municipal arborists. So they definitely have the knowledge, relevant experience, both with our municipality and our local standards, as well as others in the area.
Thank you. Councilmember McDonald.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I appreciate you attaching the information to the errata. I guess I wanted to make sure we have a bigger discussion around this because we've been hearing ongoing concerns from the community about the health of our canopy. And while I agree that Topes does great work as far as I can tell on when we need emergency services and tree removal, my concern is especially for the ongoing health of the tree canopy, because this is something that's degrading and we're not getting things replaced at the rate that is going to have us have an ongoing canopy. And if we say we want to protect against climate change, this is one of the most important ways that we can do that. And it seems like it's been falling by the wayside. I don't know if you can speak to this. We're hearing trees cut down on the golf course constantly, and I don't know if any new ones have been planted. So it seems like a lot of trees are coming down. And so the community, I think, is seeing this and having concern that it's not being managed well, and that some of the staff might not be like I think the higher ups do have a lot of great qualifications. They have a lot of great services to provide for us. And I don't doubt that. But we had talked last year about what about the possibility of having one agency who does the tree removal. So kind of like an emergency contract. I think we heard somebody from the public mention that. And I think Topes is really good for that. They're local, they're fast. They do have a lot of knowledge for that type of situation. But the bigger concern that the community and myself also as a council member has is the longer we keep pushing off doing something to improve the health of our forest, we're going to be in trouble that's irreparable. And so I think that we really need to not just keep renewing. And this brings me actually to another question. So somebody mentioned the annual renewal. Does that come back to council every year, or can it just be renewed without any council oversight? Because I wouldn't be okay with that at all.
Councilmember McDonald, I'm going to try to answer. I think there was a few questions in there. The first item that you brought up was in relation to the tree canopy coverage and the health. And I will say that the majority of work that we do as it relates to this on-call tree maintenance services contract is for safety. So it's tree clearance for our fire trucks, our garbage trucks to properly drive down the roadway. It's road clearance for the sidewalks to ensure that pedestrians can safely walk, to make sure that signs are visible, things like that. The degree to which we use them to remove trees is very, very small. I think last year we took down less than a dozen trees. And so those are really high risk trees that have succumbed to disease, or either they're starting to mound, so they're showing signs of failure. So those are the only instances where we're really taking down trees. We're not actively doing that unless they're high risk or potentially going to fall. And in those instances, we do utilize Topes. The bigger impact we're seeing the canopy is really the private tree removals. So we do get quite a few private tree removal requests through a tree permit application process, and that's where we're seeing the majority of the canopy loss. And we're actively working through our Title 12 revisions to try and enhance the replant process to try and address where we're seeing the biggest cause as it relates to canopy. You did bring up potentially having multiple agreements with different agencies, one for emergency requests and kind of emergency prompts work, and the other for kind of longer term, regular scheduled maintenance. I do think our concern as it relates to that is West Coast Arborists and some of the other agencies that provided proposals had a very long time frame or window in which they would actually respond to requests. So TOPE's right now in an emergency, we called them out after hours last week, and they were here within 20 minutes of us reaching out to them. So we all know and recognize, I think, that they're great at the emergency response, but they're also really great at scheduling the work. So right now, if we do grid trimming, street clearance activities, we can typically schedule that within a week. West Coast Arborists, on their proposal, they've explicitly written that it's like a 30-day window. And in the past, I believe it was in 2014, the city authorized 2 agreements, kind of what you're speaking to, one with TOPE's and one with West Coast Arborists. And after 2 fiscal years, the city opted not to renew with West Coast Arborists because they were much more costly. They did not promptly respond in emergencies, and they were very, very, very far out in terms of scheduling the actual work. And so it just didn't meet the city's expectations at the time. And so they opted not to continue with West Coast Arborists at that time.
No, and then the other question was, if we, so it's, the request is to have a multiple year approval.
Yes. Sorry, I forgot about that part of the question. So yes, the way that the staff report is written is that it's a base contract with 4 options to renew. Each of those options is for 1 fiscal year. And the secondary part of that staff report is to authorize the mayor to sign the extensions. So we would execute an extension letter each year and send that to the mayor. It wouldn't necessarily come before the council for another formal review like this.
And I think that's the thing that people would have the biggest issue about, because I understand. Thank you very much for the really detailed response to that. And so it sounds like we have tried West Coast Arborists and that doesn't work well. And the other thing that, because we're having the idea of a forester coming forward, I think that that bodes well for dealing with the canopy issues going forward. So I guess my biggest question, well, I guess there's one other question I have, and that is, so somebody had made the point that if we authorize $250,000, that tends to get spent. So kind of a 2-part question to that. Is that the case where we tend to expend the whole amount and we tend to need it? And also, is it something where if the city forester comes on board and we see other options, do we have to continue to use TOPEs, or is it just as an ad needed basis?
So several parts to that question. I think I got most of them jotted down here. So in terms of the year-over-year agreements, I just want to quickly touch on that. We have noticed that last year we put out an RFP and we came to council, and at the time, I think the bidding process was a little bit confusing. So we took the feedback that we received at the dais here and we went back and we revised the process, how we had the contractors bid. And what we noticed between that 1-year difference is a significant increase in the hourly wage for the workers. So we're already seeing year over year, every time we put out an RFP for a similar service, we do notice an increase in price. So the thought process behind having options to renew is that we're locking it in at the current rate associated with the current RFP, and that way our resources go further. So that's kind of the intention there. I think that you asked about the expenditures. So we historically have budgeted $200,000, I think, since 2018. Last year we increased it to 220, and this year we're proposing 250. So there's a slight increase. We tend to use the majority of the funds, but we are invoiced for the work that we're assigned. So we're not just using it to use it, we are using it to do the necessary grid clearance that we need in order, again, for our EMS vehicles to properly get on the road, for our pedestrians to use our sidewalks, and for our vehicles to see any kind of roadway signs. And then we also use them in emergency scenarios as it relates to like storm damage and things like that, which we've seen kind of an uptick in the last few years. So no, we don't just use the money to use the money. We are assigning them work tasks on an as needed basis.
And if it turned out we had less work that we needed to hire them for, we're not committed to expending the full amount, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. sorry, although the hourly rate per person is lower, their rate per tree is actually higher than some of the other ones. So do you have an idea of, do they actually end up being cheaper in the long run because their per tree cost, if you add that together with the personnel cost, is higher?
So they do end up being more affordable, to answer your question. And I think the confusion here is the number of laborers that they have assigned to the trimming service. So you'll see Topes has used actually 2 laborers, some others have played using 1 laborer. So it ends up being that they're charging the cost per individual performing the tree work. So, and they are significantly lower as it relates to labor costs. I believe about 30% lower than the next lowest bidder.
Yeah, so they're lower on the labor costs, but the one right below that, they're actually higher on the per tree cost. If you, like the trimming services. So like from 0 to 18 inches, they're 160 an hour. And then for 19 inches and over, it's 240 an hour, which is higher than all but one of the other services.
And that's because it's like 2-man crew, 3-man crew. They're increasing the number of workers that they anticipate needing for the larger the size of the tree.
Oh, okay, so they're both listed as per hour. Are you saying that you're not paying both the per hour per person and the per hour per tree, that per hour per person works into the cost per tree?
I'm not sure I understood
The
the
size
question,
of
but
the
they're
tree.
charging us the hourly wage for the worker that is assigned to the task and then the equipment rate.
Okay, so you're paying both the street clearance activities of the per person rate of the 240 for 3 people, plus 160 an hour for a 0 to 18 inch tree, or 240 an hour for the 19 to.
No.
Great.
So I think you can think about it the most simplistic way is if you look at the hourly wages, it would be an hourly wage plus the equipment that was on site to do that work. So they've estimated the 240 is a 3-person crew.
Got it. So it's not in addition, that
Correct.
is captured in, because I think that helps a lot so that you can see a little bit more clearly what the cost is. It actually, on paper, it still makes them look more expensive based on the tree, but there are probably other services we use them for. I guess my biggest concern is I feel like we really need to be paying attention to our contracts and whether that's benefiting or restoring and maintaining the health of our canopy. So I see the need for the contract. And I think that, the fact that they have their equipment on our property obviously makes, they don't anymore?
They do not.
Oh, okay. So they're no longer renting space from us up at the, okay, so they bring
That's
their
correct.
equipment in. Okay, I didn't realize that.
I did not mean to interrupt. I just meant before you move to the next council member, there's a couple just things that I thought could help for everybody as we go through this. The first one is that it is possible to structure a contract so that it would come back to the council on an annual basis. We could do that. That's another step. What we're trying to achieve though is locking in pricing over the longer term. So that's why they have chosen to draft it that way. I think one of the things you're seeing is we're seeing in a lot of our different things we go out to bid for, we have a relatively small group of local vendors for each thing we do. So the pool is not as big as we'd like it to be if we were in an urban area, I think at times as well. So I think hopefully those 2 things will help with the rest of the discussion.
Thanks for that. I really appreciate all the information because I think that we need that to kind of understand what we're deciding, and it helps the public to know what we're committing to. And I really appreciate the comment about that we could have it come back to council, because I think it's important to revisit that every year. I don't like the idea of kind of like people have talked about with waste management. If we're stuck in something and it's harder to get out of, I think that we potentially run into problems that we can't say, wait a minute, we need to shift direction. So I'd love to hear what others think.
Councilmember Pedori.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just for my sake, a couple of questions. Similar to how we have monitor like the roads with an index, do we have something to measure what the tree canopy is for the city? I understand there's private property and public. Do we monitor something related to the overall quality for the canopy?
Councilmember Pedori, we do not. There was a study done in 2015, but it's a static number. So it was what the canopy looked like in 2015. It's no longer accurate today, and we don't have a database or management tracking for the entire canopy.
But it's possible to get it done if we have software or the resources? Is that something that's feasible or not?
That's something that's feasible. I imagine it would be costly and something that would need to be included in the budget in order to do the initial assessment to determine what the current canopy levels are, and then in kind of ongoing database licensing in order
Okay.
for us to update and manage it. Because again, it's a helpful metric at a point in time, but you also need to update that over time to ensure its accuracy.
Okay, got it. And just from a TOPS perspective, TOPS is following the direction of what we provide them, correct? They're not just going around like removing trees.
That's
We have to
correct.
give them direction, correct?
That's correct. The arborist provides a direction for the tree service contract.
Okay. So I think we're in the process of hiring a forester at some point in time here. I think we are at least allocated FTEs towards that effort as part of the budget. Is that correct, Mr. Morganson?
Thank you, Councilmember. Yes, the second meeting in September, will we come back with budget amendments and it'll include the forester position.
Okay. So my view is that at the end of the day, we need somebody experienced to review this agreement. And I say since we're coming back in yearly increments to the council, I would support that, saying coming back to the city in yearly increments. And I would expect the new hire to review this agreement as part of the process to see what is exactly missing. Because it looks like, just if I read the evaluations here, seems like TOP is coming on top. First of all, they're local, so therefore I can understand why the response times are kind of like faster. But there's several, like I'm guessing the orange highlights indicate where TOPS is better versus somebody else is better in the evaluation process. And so it seems like TOPS is certainly coming out ahead with respect to the evaluations. But I don't know the qualitative nature of the TOPS versus anybody else to comment on that. And I think the forester would be the prime example for us to say the forester needs to weigh in on this to see if this agreement holds good or not. So my view is that move forward with this for the year, have the forester weigh in with this agreement when he or she gets on board, and then take it forward from there from next year onwards. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Yes, I agree with that comment just made by Councilmember Paduri. I think that we obviously are focused right now on bringing on a new staff member, and we don't have that person yet, and it could take some time, and we have these things that need to get done. So we have to move forward, and this is the process that we followed to get to where we are. And so I feel that we need to move this forward tonight. With respect to the annual nature or the renewal of the contract, if it's possible to come back and preserve pricing, that would obviously be ideal. I would imagine you probably could, but I'm not certain of that. But if we do make that higher within the next year, that person's gonna have to be heavily involved in the next segment of our forestry development, canopy development. So, and at that time, I think that's when that would happen. And so tonight, I'm in favor of the recommendation.
Councilmember Beck.
Thank you. I guess I have a couple of questions. First, going back to last year during the process of the contract is, I know it was mentioned that the TOPS Tree Service was storing their equipment on site, and that was the reason they're able to respond very quickly. So they're no longer on site. I think it was Mr. Go who had mentioned that. So they're no longer on site, but yet they can still respond quickly, which is great. As a presentation, what I would love to see are their billing statements. So how much work they did on a monthly basis. And then annually what the cost truly was, and see what items they are working on. Because it's my understanding from at least last year, it was like a monthly billing when we discussed about, are we charging them to be on site at the corporate yard? And Mr. Go had mentioned, yes, that we were charging them, and that was a monthly billing. So in these type of presentations, I would love to see the invoicing to see what they do charge us, what they're working on. In addition, when we're awarding these type of contracts or looking at these contracts, I would love to have the company do the presentation. so that we can ask them directly the questions and how qualified they are, rather than hearing it from staff. I appreciate hearing it from staff, but again, they're a local company and I'd love to hear their services, who's certified, how often they're called out. And I do have to agree with Councilwoman McDonald is having them on an emergency basis because especially during the storms that we had 2 years ago, and I know that they were able to get out in a timely manner. But do we need them year round? Because when you do a breakdown, we're looking at, $20,000 per month. And are they out there every month at $20,000 a month? That's a lot of money. That's a lot of work that they're doing. And I would love to have seen those invoices to show what work they're doing. I am not in favor of doing a multi-year contract, obviously. I guess my other concern is it seems to be a couple of the same vendors that are awarded these contracts on an annual basis, and that is very concerning to me. And it's just not Tope's Tree Service, it's other vendors as well. And that's just a little concerning. And the numbers are always so close with their bids. And this one is just $20,000 more from last year. So again, I think having those statements available, what work they're working on, what they've done for us this past year before awarding any contracts. So thank you.
Did you have any questions for staff?
Those were my comments to staff. I should have said I have a few comments rather than a
Okay,
few
just-
questions.
Okay. Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Your Honor. So, City Manager, just to be clear, we can terminate this contract at any point, or does it have to be on these annual timelines? What are the provisions of the contract that allow us to terminate?
Councilmember Coletti, I don't have a copy of our standard contract in front of me, but I believe we have a 30-day cancellation clause as standard in our contract. I'll look at our city attorney to verify that if it's possible.
I don't have it in front of me, but that's my memory as well.
Okay, so we basically can get out of the contract whenever we want with a 30-day notice. Okay,
It should also be one that has what's called a termination for convenience, so we don't need to prove cause.
right. Well, if that's the case, we did take a lot of time and effort to try to get a forester allocated as part of this year's budget cycle. So that will be the expert in-house that can help us develop not only the maintenance programs, but also we heard about how we're going to determine a baseline of the tree canopy. And it's true that urban forest management plan goes all the way back to 2015, I believe. And we're also talking about Title 12 coming back to council. It seems to me when that comes back, we should discuss how the canopy will be established and how a baseline will be established, and then going forward, how we can measure against that baseline. And there is technology to do that, LiDAR being one of them. And that would be great if we can actually talk about that instead of using a lot of subjective analysis, so we can really know and have a metric on how we are doing with our canopy. But if we can get out of this contract in a 30-day with a 30-day notice, and we have a forester coming, I think that removes quite a bit of the heartburn or perceived heartburn. But they're in this matrix, and thank you for putting this together. It is in the errata, as the city manager mentioned. Are we paying them? I mean, there's something in here for tree watering services. Have we ever paid them a nickel to water our trees?
We include that in there as an option in case we need that service, so we have a rate. But typically, no.
Okay, I would hope never know, but because
No.
didn't we allocate funds last year's budget?
And we have a staff member that's working on watering.
Okay, well, all right. And just as a general comment, and is that the mayor, the way we set this up, and we did this, back in 2021, is the mayor has signature authority for our contracts and other legal documents, but that is when he's acting in as far as the eyes of the council. So the idea is council has already seen the document, and that the mayor actually is, through his signature authority, is verifying what council actually has seen and approved. So I wouldn't want to see a contract or us just say, well, the mayor can deal with it and the council will never see it. that's just general commentary. And I don't think that certainly is not in the spirit of the charter and then the language we codified, I think, in 2.05 of our municipal code. So those are my comments.
Councilmember Emilio.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a couple of things. I was glad to hear Tope's tree service was the one to be authorized to take care of our problems. And it sounds to me that it could be terminated within 30 days from what Member Coletti mentioned. But I do want to bring up a couple of things with Tope's. Andrew Tope was born and raised in Pacific Grove, California. He was the fourth child of 10 brothers. Yes, he had some sisters too. So at the age of 17, he set out to do just that, to earn $4 an hour is what he did. And then he started trimming trees and selling firewood when at a very young age. And he developed later on in life, Tope's Tree and Service Incorporated. And he does, of course, Pacific Grove, Monterey, Carmel Valley, Big Sur. He also does Seaside. And I am agreement with the authorization, and Councilmember Coletti mentioned it could be terminated in 30 days if there's a problem, but I go along with the staff recommendation. It's a local business and it's a minority-owned business.
I'll just add one thing. I think we've conflated, if that's the right word, the service by this contractor with the health of the canopy. And they're related, but they're two different things. And so having a different contractor doesn't necessarily mean the canopy is going to be different. That's a bigger question. And that's why looks like we'll probably hire a forester to address that issue. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion, Your Honor.
Please.
I'll move recommendation 1.
Second that.
Councilmember McDonald.
Is it possible to do a friendly amendment that we have it come back annually for council review before being signed for a renewal?
This, can we direct?
Only if it's not going to affect pricing. But
Yeah, let me ask a question. on
Okay.
that First, to direct it to our city attorney, because that's internal. This recommendation refers to annual extensions, which is all internal to the city. I'm not sure how that enters into an agreement with an external party. Is that even necessary? Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I understand the question. So maybe you could rephrase it.
How about our mayor pro tem might?
Oh, I was just going to say that I think we can go with the recommendation since we have the authority to terminate the contract with 30 days. If we need to, we could revisit the contract in a year and then terminate it in 30 days, right?
Yes, you could. And what I've been trying to do for the last few minutes is see if I could pull up that standard contract. Did you find it? Okay. If you just give me 1 minute to check.
I'm just wondering if we could just direct staff on the anniversary of the contract to bring it back to council. And that's not even needs to be part of the agreement.
Yes, you can. If you make that in your motion, we can have the documents say that.
Okay.
So I'll just add an addition to my motion to recommendation 1, recommend or a secondary recommendation that we direct staff to bring this back in a year for review.
I'll agree with that. Second.
Councilmember Coletti. Oh, okay. All right. Without further discussion on this item? All in favor?
Before you,
Okay.
Opposed? before you all vote, did you want me to answer
Sure.
the question?
Sure.
About the termination? Yeah, I see it is in the standard agreement form that the city may at any time, and I'm assuming it would be in this one as well. The city may at any time for any reason without cause suspend or terminate this agreement or any portion thereof by serving upon the contractor at least 30 days prior written notice. So I would just ask if it's, for whatever reason, it's not in whatever contract you're working on, though. This standard one I'm looking at is the maintenance services agreement. So I'm seeing heads go north to south over there, so it sounds like that's the right one.
Okay, all opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. And that brings us to item 11A. Mr. Pyrick.
Well, now I have to shift gears. So give it a
Yes.
second.
Please.
Okay, gears are shifted. This item is a proposed first reading of an ordinance to amend section 2.060108 of the city's municipal code that relates to the residency or requirement for the city manager. And probably the easiest way to have this conversation is for me to ask the city clerk to put up on the board the proposed change. Thank you. So as we indicated in the staff report and agenda report, and as is reflected in the ordinance, the proposed change is shown here. You see language which has been stricken, and then the added language is underlined. So I'm just going to read this. It's not that long. It says residency requirement. It shall not be necessary. This is in reference to the city manager. It shall not be necessary that he or she reside in the city at the time of his, her appointment, but he or she shall become a resident, and I'm going to read it as it's being changed, within 60 days thereafter of the county of Monterey or such other location as mutually agreed upon in writing by the city council and the city manager. So the reason for that flexibility is that there may be special circumstances that, it's a matter of geography, that there may be some other location that may not be in the county, but still is close enough to the county that the city manager could be responsive to whatever the needs might be, including emergency situations. So the background on this is that the California Constitution in Article 11, Section 10 says that a city may not require its employees to be residents of the city, except that such employees may be required to reside within a reasonable and specific distance of their place of employment or other designated locations. So the test here would be whether or not it would be reasonable to require a certain distance. And here, as I've indicated in my earlier comments, it's proposed to be the county of Monterey or other locations. So that gives the flexibility. And my advice would be that the best place to put in writing, if there's going to be some other location, would be in the employment agreement with the city manager. So at the time the city manager is hired, there isn't any doubt about that alternative location. And the whole purpose of this is so that the city manager could get to the city within a reasonable period of time in the event of an emergency. So the recommended action is to request that I read the title and then to waive further reading and of the ordinance and to hold a first reading and to direct a summary of the ordinance to be published. And I'm prepared to answer questions.
Thank you. Public comment, please come forward. Welcome.
Garcia, Pacific Grove resident. I was trying to listen to you, but anyway, I was distracted. How does this coincide with the charter? That's my question. Thank you.
Any virtual, Please, anyone else wishing to speak?
Okay, so I'm wondering if this is in reaction to the fact that I personally felt traumatized by the last city manager who came from LA. And maybe is it like reactionary to say that now they have to live in Pacific Grove? And what if they can't afford a house here in Pacific Grove? And also, I don't know how to say this politely, but like, I don't want us to get inbred. I think it's okay to have other ideas from other cities. I would be perfectly fine with saying you can live anywhere 11 miles away or in the city of Pacific Grove. 11 miles is Marina. It would be ideal that they would be close enough where they could really experience life here. And I think this should not only be true of the city manager, but also of the CDD director, the deputy city manager, like people who really hold strong positions in our city. They have to live close enough where they can experience life here, but they don't have to be necessarily I don't know. I just don't think it's a condition that I find necessary to them doing a good job. Thank you.
Thank you. Any virtual public comment?
Lisa Chioni.
Thank you. I'm glad to see the municipal code is being revised to conform to the Constitution, the California Constitution. However, I believe the proposed wording to limit city manager residency to the entire Monterey County does not serve Pacific Grove well. I wrote to you today and back in March when this idea was first introduced as well, because the agenda report then pointed out that the city manager serves as the emergency services director for the city and should live within reasonable driving distance of PG. And I agree with that. But considering the January 2023 predictions and notification warnings from the county and the state that the Monterey Peninsula could be cut off from the rest of California due to epic floodwater from the Salinas River, and those epic floodwaters seem to be becoming more frequent. And considering the 1995 experience where the peninsula was indeed cut off, I would suggest the residence limitations be, quote, Monterey Peninsula and contiguous cities of Northwest Monterey County. On the Pacific Grove side of the Salinas River floodplain. And I, end quote, and I believe this description would extend to Marina and somewhere west of Spreckles. Mileage could be added in there as well, but with the understanding that it's not on the other side of the Salinas River. And perhaps the north side of Carmel Valley Road would be included in that. Anyway, I would also be more aligned. It would also be more aligned with the region that PG is part of without being unreasonably limited. There's also terminology that, quote, such other location as mutually agreed upon in writing, end quote. And I think that needs to be more limited in scope. I think that that should be clear considering the city's experience with the previous city manager who resided for multiple years in Southern California with approval of the council at that time. That was definitely not in the community's best interests. So I would hope you'd make some adjustments in this because Monterey County is really big. And I think this could be improved upon. Thank you.
No further hands are raised, Mayor.
Council discussion on the item?
Excuse me, Mayor, I do have an answer on the question about the
Okay,
charter.
thank you.
Article 19 of the charter is a city manager, and I'll quote, it says in the second paragraph, it shall not be necessary for the city manager that this, let me start that over. It shall not be necessary that the city manager reside in the city at the time of appointment, but the city manager shall become a resident thereof within 60 days thereafter and thereafter during incumbency shall actually reside in the city. So it's my opinion that that provision of the charter is not legally enforceable in light of the California Constitution provision that I read to you previously.
Thank you for that clarification. And the charter was written in 25. I'm looking at Councilmember Coletti. 27. To 27. Were they still using horses to get around in 27? Thank you for that. Councilmember Beck.
Thank you. I am in favor of Monterey County, having just gone through the interview process with several candidates for city manager. And we have a great city manager. I don't think we should limit it to 11 miles or, you know, west of Salinas River and so forth. I think Monterey County is sufficient, especially to keep and retain a great city manager. So I would be in favorable of Monterey County as the wording. Thank you.
Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. One question. So I hear the public's concern about the Salinas River divide that could make us an island. Hopefully that won't happen again. But in light of the possibility that it could, do we generally have a backup plan in place? Or how would we deal with that type of situation? And can we even legally, I mean, I guess technically, I don't know what the law holds as far as the restrictions you can have, but is it necessary to try and keep it in case they are essentially shut away from the city?
Well, you asked the legal part, and I don't know if the city manager wants to weigh in on this, but the words in the California Constitution are that they may be required to reside within a reasonable and specific distance of their place of employment or other designated locations. So what is reasonable and specific is a matter of judgment by the council to make that determination. I believe it was Bob Peralta I had been speaking with previously, because this was an item that was going to come back a few months ago, but is coming back now. His thought was Monterey County. And then there was further discussion about, well, there may be some places that are, you know, even closer than Monterey County, because Monterey County extends, as we all know, down to San Luis Obispo County line, that there may be some places to the, I guess, to the north or northeast that may even be geographically closer than the distant parts of the county. So the flexibility being, if it's not in the county, is it someplace that's close enough that it would be reasonable to require that the city manager live at least that close. And it's primarily for the emergency powers. But I would also mention that in this day and age with the internet and cell phones, that often people are able to communicate even if they're not physically on site. You know, obviously, if you're talking about a firefighter or something like that, you know, they can't phone it in. You know, they got to be on site, or someone like a city manager or, you know, some other, you know, finance manager, whoever it might be, you know, could potentially perform their duties even if they're not on site.
Thank you. Would you like,
Since
Councilmember?
we're talking about you, Mr. Mogensen, you're not
That's that.
planning on moving like to Bradley, where
No, I'm
it's
not.
right on the San Luis Obispo County line, 2 hours
I have no
away.
desire to lengthen any commute, stay place. As far as the Salinas River, though, you made me think of the last couple of years when we had some wetter years, and there are daily meetings at that point amongst all of the the county emergency operational people. And they usually know about 24 hours ahead if there's a chance of the river flooding. So at that point in time, like I know I was in the city I worked in was on this side of the river, on the peninsula side. So it wasn't an issue for me, but people who lived on the other side, we had told them, don't come to work tomorrow just in case. So you typically do have a little bit of a warning. It's not overnight. So I would say if we had emergency personnel such as firefighters and police officers, we might ask them to stay and we'd pay for a hotel room that night if that was the case.
Okay, and that was kind of my thought, because if we have, for example, the city manager who we do need available to manage the city, maybe staying on this side of a potential shut off might be valuable. And I think that was the concern, just making sure we had someone in place, because I will say, when we had the trees down, there was no cell service and we couldn't get the internet to work either. So I think that's the bigger concern now that people have seen this happen. So that's why I was asking about, is there an emergency plan in place so that maybe something like you suggested could happen, so we'd have someone on board?
We do have some emergency plans in place, and I'm not ready to, I guess, regurgitate those quickly. And our one firefighter left at this point, and I'm not sure if Commander Anderson also has it on the forefront of his mind and how we'd operate with that, but we do have plans.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm comfortable with the language proposed, and I think what's proposed is county plus flexibility for a northern part above the county that might be closer than King City or something down there. So I'm okay with the proposal. I think that it's what the proposal is tonight. And I think it addresses a lot of different concerns and gives us a little flexibility. Thank you.
Councilmember Coletti.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, in general, I don't have a problem, but it's this clause or such other location, which means anything outside of Monterey County. And yeah, Monterey Peninsula isn't perfectly, at the central or at the centroid of the county, but that's just too big of a reach, and it's undefined. That could mean anything. So I can't support that. But if Monterey County certainly, and if we had to, I don't want to try to make this any more complicated than it has to be. And by the way, as has been noticed, this ordinance is not being brought forth because of our current city manager. This was introduced back in March before we'd even interviewed our current city manager. So this was just a housekeeping exercise that we agreed to do months ago, partially based on some of the comments that have been offered by the public. So if we can remove that, I think we'll be in good shape. But as it is now, it's completely open-ended. It basically says with this clause or such other location, it means anywhere.
I could offer, if I could, Mayor, on that. There is some case law, I think it involves firefighters in Santa Clara County, where there was a specific mileage distance from the county. Don't hold me to it, but I think it was 40 miles, something like that. So what you could do to address that issue, if you wish to, you could add to the end of this ordinance where it says agreed upon in writing by the city council and city manager, you could add not to exceed X number of miles from city hall. If you wanted to.
Well, there's no number right now.
Yeah.
And so that's exactly back where we were originally. And so we did this because of what happened earlier. And now we're saying, well, that was okay because it can be anywhere.
Are you?
Yeah,
you
that-
finished?
that's all I have.
I understand, Councilmember Coletti. I understand the concern. I'd rather not start pulling out numbers and mileage here on the dais. I'm not sure that'll make this the perfect ordinance. I think the key phrase is it's in writing. And there has to be a discussion, of course, any agreement with a future city manager would have to be in public and in writing. And I'm comfortable with that. Want to start pegging a number. Councilmember Emilio.
You'd like to make a motion to request the city attorney read the title of the ordinance?
As is.
As is.
Okay. Yes, this is an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Pacific Grove amending section 2.06.010A of the Pacific Grove Municipal Code regarding residence requirement for city manager. And what you could do for the balance is just say that you move the remaining recommended actions.
Okay, L remaining, the rest of the remaining recommendations then on the motion, first motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries 6-1. Coletti opposing. Item 11B, Mr. Mogensen.
Mr. Mayor, Director Go will present this item.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the City Council, I do not have a formal presentation for this item. I'll just be very brief. Tonight, we're asking you to basically enter into an amendment with the Lighthouse Fellowship to continue to rent the office space at the community center. Since 2015, we have been under an agreement with them to rent that office space. It's about 600 square feet for $650 per month. They've been very good tenants. We're asking to continue that original lease for an amendment tonight, which is all in your packet. We've reached out to Pastor Dave, and he has expressed interest in continuing to be a good partner with the City of Pacific Grove at the same terms of the original lease. I would like to just specify that this is only for the office space. They utilize the Lebec room at the community center on Sundays through a recreational use permit, as anybody would that would be renting the hall for any other activity. So this is just strictly for the office space and not for their actual use of the Lebec room. That concludes my report. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Public comment on this item? Any online comments? Council discussion? Councilmember Beck.
Thank you. What is is it a weekly charge that they have for the Lebec room?
Councilmember Beck, I do not have that information right in front of me, but it is, I believe, yes, a weekly charge or whatever is set forth in the use rate. We have an actual agreement or a use permit for the weekly use.
Okay,
Yes.
so it's the same fee we would charge a resident or another organization going in there for the Lebec room?
I believe that's the case. They pay us a rent check and then they pay us a use check on a monthly basis,
Okay, thank you.
of course.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
I'm ready to move forward with this item and I'm supportive. I'd ask that city attorney read the title of the ordinance as is.
Yeah, I'm prepared to do that. This is an ordinance of the City of Pacific Grove authorizing the city to execute lease amendment number 2 for the community center office space. And as I just indicated a moment ago, the remaining motion could be to approve the balance of the recommended actions.
Then I shall make the motion to approve the balance. Thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Item 12A. Mr. Coletti, Councilmember Coletti.
Your Honor. I have some slides. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Sandra. This, as the cover slide says, is a proposed ordinance to amend our short-term rental ordinance as found in the municipal code, chapter 7.04. And what we're proposing tonight is to increase the penalty maximum for health and safety infractions and health and safety infractions only in accordance with state law. Next slide, please. So the state law in this case is Senate Bill 60. I believe it was chaptered in 2021, and it provides the following. And by the way, that's was codified into Government Code Section 36900, and that particular government code is attached to the agenda report. So what it does basically, it sets a level of fines, a schedule of fines for first, second, and third violations of a short-term rental ordinance. The first violation is 1,500, second 3,000, third 5,000. But again, this only applies to health and safety infractions. And in addition, the city must provide a hardship waiver. And all of those provisions, the fine schedule, as well as what it's related to and the hardship waiver, are all within Government Code 36900D, as in David. Next slide, please. Want me to start over? Take two. So what are examples of health and safety violations? The city manager and I kind of were talking about this, and this kind of keys into recommendation number 2, which was to develop a comprehensive list of, what would represent a health and safety infraction. Well, Santa Rosa kind of has answered this question for us. I found this. There are several cities that have implemented these maximums, these penalty maximums in their own short-term rental ordinance. And so it's always better to copy than try to reinvent the wheel. And so this came directly from Santa Rosa's municipal code. And their list includes operation of a rental without a permit. That certainly has been known to happen. Exceeding occupancy limits. This is something we've been hearing about more and more, especially as it's pretty easy to see that some of our short-term rentals are being advertised for occupancy limits that are greater than what they're actually permitted for. So you can see that right in the Airbnb listing. It's not, okay, they're saying 10 guests can be, can stay on the premises when the permit says, 6. So those things are easily determined. Santa Rosa goes on to say failure to observe parking requirements, failure to observe quiet hours, outdoor amplified sounds, basically all of the things that involve the environment that the neighbors will be affected by are subject to the health and safety provisions of this. So next slide, please. So with those kind of as examples, the proposed ordinance, which is attached to the agenda report, proposes to increase the penalty maximums consistent with state law, SB 60. It does not direct staff on how to perform enforcement. It simply provides an additional tool for the enforcement toolbox. And as I mentioned before, there are many cities that have implemented this provision of state law and allowing them a more robust enforcement mechanism for their short-term rental ordinance. And I think Pacific Grove should consider doing the same thing. It's basically just another tool we need in our toolbox, but it does not tell staff how to do their work. Next slide, please. So the recommended actions as appear here are same as within the agenda report. It's basically to direct the city manager to come back with a draft ordinance, a proposed draft ordinance is provided, and also to direct the city manager to return with a comprehensive list of infractions that pose a threat to public health and safety. We've already kind of done that, did a little bit of the legwork already in providing an example from the Santa Rosa Municipal Code. And that concludes my presentation.
Do we have public comment on this item? Please come forward. Seeing none, virtual public comment?
No virtual, Mayor. Oh, I'm sorry, one hand. Inga Lawrenson Dimer.
Thank you for noticing, Sandra. this one is just a next logical step in the fact that we have worked so hard to limit our short-term rentals to only the coastal zone and then subject to exclusionary zones. And this is just a logical progression to comply with state law too. And it seems like a no-brainer to me. And as an aside, I wonder if we are getting a code compliance officer again. I should have asked the city manager. Thank you very much.
Trustee Thomas?
That was my question, comment too, is at this time, I don't think there's any monitoring of illegal short-term rentals or vacation rentals. And, you know, they'll be popping up on like Craigslist and all that kind of thing. So, you know, I understand what Luke is saying for these fines, but if no one's monitoring illegal ones, then, you know, anyway, thank you.
What other hands are raised, Mayor?
Council discussion,
Mayor, I had a comment to make, if that's all right.
please.
With respect to the ordinance as it's drafted, I was just noticing that the language that references to in lieu of or in addition to administrative penalties authorized by PGMC section 7.40190, that the city may prosecute short-term rentals as an infraction. And then under section A, it says that penalty provisions set by this section shall only apply to infractions that pose a threat to public health and safety. And then there's an exception for a first-time offense. And those are the higher penalty amounts, as I understand it, that are authorized by SB 60. So I guess my comment would be that there was a reference made to the Santa Rosa ordinance, which gave specific examples, I guess, of violations that would qualify for the higher penalty. But this ordinance does not provide those examples. So I guess if we're going to be coming back with an ordinance, whether or not we want to leave it as it's written or to be more specific in terms of what are considered to be violations. The one comment I would make is that if we were attempting to be more specific, it's like any list. Sometimes there's things that might not be on the list that do qualify as a threat to public health and safety. And you could treat it on a case-by-case basis and see what the violation is, and then make a determination as to whether or not at the time the violation does in fact pose a threat to public health and safety, which is what this ordinance as drafted does. And that's, I guess, a little different than what Santa Rosa did, which was to give the specific examples. And this kind of relates to the second recommendation, which is to prepare a comprehensive list of infractions. And that might be a bit of a challenge because there could be many violations that could constitute a threat to public health or safety. And I think we need to be careful if we make this list and let's say there's 30 things that we put on this list, but then there's something that is a violation that does pose that threat and it's not on the list, then does that mean that you can't cite it for the higher infraction amounts? So my thoughts on this as I reflect on it would be maybe we leave it with the language as it's been drafted, because that allows the code enforcement officer the ability to look on this as a case-by-case basis, make a determination as to whether the violation does constitute a threat to public health and safety. And if the officer finds that's true, then it can be cited for the higher amounts. And then I guess my last comment would be this second recommendation about coming back with a comprehensive list, that's, and A, that's a lot of work, and B, it might miss some things that would otherwise be a health and safety violation.
Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you, Mayor. That's a good point. And so what I like about the idea of the list is it lets people know these are some of the things that if you do this, these are violations. So people can't say, well, I didn't know what that meant. And I wasn't, like, people may misinterpret what a public threat is. And so I think that that list was helpful, but maybe can there be language that says this is not an exclusive list, but these are the types of things that have penalties, and then others that could be considered that we could determine whether it's a public threat on a case by case basis.
That's a good point.
Mhm.
And so then the question is whether you put that list, as Santa Rosa did, into your code, or you make it something else. It's a policy, or maybe it's set by resolution, or some other means by which the public would know what constitutes a violation. And your comment about saying it's not an exclusive list, I think we could do that with some drafting and say that that it includes, but it's not limited to, and then have your list, and then say, as your last item, other violations which constitute a threat to public health and safety, so that there's I'll call it a catch-all, if you will. So if there is some violation that isn't on the list, but does constitute a threat, that there would be that discretion.
Yeah, that's great. People will come up with things we haven't. I
Yeah.
think allowing room
Yeah.
for that would be wise. So, but I like the idea of capturing both, but giving an idea, because some people might not realize what that means. So whether it's here or in some other format in a policy, whatever everybody thinks.
Councilmember Pedori.
Yeah, on that note, can we just reference the Senate Bill 60? Because that seems to be capturing everything here rather than repeating whatever's there in the bill back into our policy. Is that not?
Doesn't force us. You have to.
Please use the microphone.
It's a template. It allows you to do it. It establishes law that allows you to become compliant too, but it doesn't force you to adopt it. That has to be done through ordinance.
What I mean is, like, through the ordinance, we adopt Senate Bill 60 into our ordinance by
That's what
by that language.
That's what the proposed draft does.
So we're copying the language, right?
Well, we're providing, yeah, in some cases, there's a fine schedule. That was, I think, on slide number 2 or 3. The 3 fines, 1,500, 3,000, 5,000. It has to be a health and safety infraction. There are specific definitions, and you have to provide a waiver, and that's what's provided in the draft ordinance. And I do agree with Councilmember McDonald that the idea of a list is to give some guidance, but not to hamstring the city in enforcing it. But the first thing I did when I was looking at this was I sent an email to our city attorney and I said, what's a health and safety infraction? We didn't get any, so I had to do a little bit of more digging, and then I came across the Santa Rosa example. And it's up to the city attorney and the city manager to decide, and working with staff, what that list should look like. I just provide an example.
Well, I'm generally comfortable with this. I think as long as the city manager and city attorney are in agreement that you have the next course of action in sight, I think we're good.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Councilmember Coletti, for this work. Thank you, staff. I think I'm totally fine with the proposal and coming back with an ordinance similar to this one that lays out the fines as laid out in the Senate bill, just as part of our code. I do think we should have a list. It's like, we had options to prosecute this and that, when I used to do it, and it was like you had a different option for whatever type of weapon, and then it would give you about 3 or 4, and then there's always a catch-all at the bottom. So I think that makes total sense, and it's kind of what we're doing. It's code compliance, enforcing the law essentially is what we're doing. So I would say I'd be in favor of supporting the recommendation one and just as far as recommendation two, perhaps direct staff to look at the ordinance and determine what they think is the best way to move forward with creating such a list. And then coming back at that point.
Thought on that. Maybe we can resolve it now.
Okay.
We could use the Santa Rosa model that was presented on one of the slides, put that into as a provision into the draft ordinance, and then add to that list as an additional section, the catch-all phrase, other violations that constitute a threat to public health and safety. So that way we don't have, a list of 200 potential violations. We've got some of the basic ones, the ones that are neighborhood impacts, which I think, as Councilmember Coletti pointed out, that appears to be kind of the thrust of what Santa Rosa has put into there. So we could do that, and then we can have the catch-all, and we could just bake that into this ordinance when we bring it back. And that, if we did that, then we wouldn't have to come back with this
Yeah.
recommendation number 2 in a list.
So I'll just go ahead and conclude my remarks that I'm in favor of that course of action. Number one, with the list baked in, I think makes the most sense. It's all codified there, and and then the code compliance officers can determine what they're going to go after. Thank you.
Yeah, that's my question too.
Yeah.
You want to have a shot at making that a formal motion?
I would just make a motion to approve recommendation number one, and with the understanding that the list is going to be created that encompasses violations and also a catch-all.
I'll second.
Okay, I have, two questions. First of all, this has a deadline, which is the first council meeting in October. And I wanted to check with both city attorney and city manager. Can that be done within that time frame? A reasonable amount of time, or do you need more time?
I don't need more time. Given the direction from the council tonight, what I plan to do is take the Santa Rosa list, insert it into the draft ordinance. Of course, I'm going to review this draft ordinance again for legal sufficiency, but assuming I don't find any hiccups there, insert the Santa Rosa list, add the catch-all phrase that we've talked about, and I think we could turn this around within 60 days or sooner.
So, Mr. Mogensen, seems like you've been backed into a corner here by Mr. Purick. He says it's ready to go.
It does sound like that, doesn't it? No, I think we'll be fine with that. We have plenty of time to work with community development staff, and to answer a question from before, we will be getting a code enforcement officer. I do want to throw out there really quickly that, enforcement of things like this is probably going to be something that, we can explain it to when we come back on maybe the model and how we'll do it. But, if somebody complains about a code violation with one of these units at 11 o'clock on a Saturday night, they're probably going to call the police department, not the code enforcement officer. But we'll have to come up with how we do that and how they refer it maybe to code enforcement for the citation writing or kind of some of those details. I just wanted to put that out there, that it is sometimes a little more.
Councilmember Emilio.
Yes, I will second Councilman Smith, but I do have one quick comment. Mr. Morganson, you mentioned a code enforcement officer that might be coming online, or they're advertising for it, or?
I do not have a specific date right now, but perhaps.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor Peak and council members. Our previous code enforcement officer accepted a job with another local city at the end of June. And immediately in July, we reopened a recruitment to fill that vacancy. That recruitment just recently closed. We reviewed the applications, and we do have a group of qualified applicants that are moving forward into the interview process, hopefully by the end of this month. So it does take a little bit of time to go through the recruitment and hiring and background check process. In the meantime, we have been utilizing Four Leaf, who provides our building services. And they do provide code compliance services. And so they have been monitoring the complaints that come in, going out and verifying whether there are any violations or not. So we have coverage currently through Four Leaf. But we do hope to have a new code compliance officer on staff probably within the next 6 to 8 weeks.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
You know, after all that discussion, I forgot, did I read the title of this ordinance?
Oh, did you? I'm sorry.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
Oh, no, no.
No, okay,
No,
I got it.
Not needed. All right, let's take a 10-minute break, returning at
Yeah.
Recording stopped.
8:14.
Simple now. Can you send me that? Oh, I'll get it. The Santa Rosa slide? Yes. Okay. I'm just gonna put that in. It looks like.
They were the last city I was looking at, because it's really first language and all the other ones. And then all of a sudden Santa Rosa did it in that table.
Yeah, but then I think having a catch-all will help because, and like, for example, let's say it was a sewer blockage or something like that. you
Yeah.
know?
Oh, yeah, right. Oh, yes.
Hey. Yeah, yeah.
Recording in progress.
Next item is 12B. Mr. Pyrick.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is a proposed resolution that's is to correct a clerical error in Resolution 24-028. That was the ballot measure to go to the voters to amend the city charter to change the number of elected city council members from 6 to 4. There was a transposition of a couple of dates on this, and if I could ask the city clerk to put that document up. So the last page of the resolution gives a recitation of the various effective dates of the amendments to the charter. And as you can see, what happened was Article 11, it had the date in the original resolution of November 3rd of 2026. And that date should be November 7th of 2028. And then for the amendment to Article 12, that effective date should be November 3rd of 2026 instead of November 7th of 2028. So this resolution merely corrects those dates. And the city clerk has contacted the county to let them know that this resolution may be forthcoming tomorrow, so that they are aware of it. And so the recommended action would be a motion to adopt the resolution that's in the packet. And I'm prepared to answer questions.
Thank you. Public comment on this item? Virtual comment?
No virtual comment, Mayor.
Council discussion? Motion?
I'll move approval, Your Honor.
I'll second.
Favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Well, that was faster than I thought.
All right. Right. Ms. Kendall, we're going on to 13A. Would you bring up the slides I had sent? Right. We use the word committees when we're talking about all the committees, but we're talking about, we use just the one word instead of boards, committees, and commissions. And if we were to be really inclusive, we would also say, and task force as well. Why we gave them all different names, I really can't tell you, but this motion covers all of the above. Next slide, please. So committees play an important advisory role. They also play a regulatory role. They have regulatory authorities, but all of them have an advisory role to council. So it's a set of sounding boards. We have 10 committees and public sounding boards to feed advice, ideas to council, where in council we do goals, policies, approve programs, the budget, and we approve public outreach. That public outreach could be a community meeting, or it could be online as well, or something on the city website. Next slide, please. So what this recommendation does is to establish a process for these city recommendations. And to do so requires 2 steps. The first step is to amend policy 0005 that says there is going to be a policy or a protocol, there's going to be a protocol for recommendations. So it's sort of we're approving the shell for the protocol. And then the second step is to approve the actual protocol. Next slide. So caveat, this doesn't apply to when city staff is making a request to a board for feedback. And you see the example there to the BNRC Title 12 is the tree ordinance. And it doesn't apply to regulatory authority that's vested in the Historic Resources Committee, the Architectural Review Board, and the Planning Commission. Oh, and the BNRC for trees as well. So we have 4 that have regulatory authority. This doesn't apply to that at all. Permits, appeals, so forth. Next slide. And so the protocol is this form. It's from the chairperson of the committee to the council liaison. It's the committee, the date of this where the form was created, and the recommendation stated with the date of the committee vote. So there's a record back to what action the committee took and the dialogue, discussion. And so what I see this as formalizing a step in communication out of the committees to council. But it's not the only way communication can happen, but it's sort of moves it forward. And the chairperson doesn't need to only talk to the council liaison, can talk to other members of council as well. Preferably not having a dialogue with more than 3 council members on it, but at least it starts this dialogue. Yeah, that's what I'm recommending. The 2 actions are to amend policy 0005, and then the other one is to approve the protocol, which is essentially use this form, and we'll see how it works. We'll see if it improves communication between the committees and council. So with that, we'll go to public comment. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. I'm the chair of your planning commission and happy to be so. But this isn't a topic that we've discussed at the commission, so I'm giving you my 2 cents. I'd like to thank the mayor for taking this on, and he did include the chairs of the committees. We discussed it in advance. And at least I'll talk for planning anyway. We seldom make a recommendation that isn't covered by the regulatory or the council has asked, or staff has asked us to do something. I've been on there, for years now, and I remember very few times we want to recommend something that you haven't asked for. But when we do want to recommend it to the whole council. So I think this proposal doesn't go far enough. The way the proposal was sort of structured, we talked to the liaison, but not to all of you. So I have 3 possible suggestions to do it differently. One would be the chair could just come to public comment and make the recommendation to all of you at once. You could pay attention or not, or take some action or not, but at least you'd all hear it. Or 2, the chair, rather than sending the form just to the liaison, could send it to all of you. Maybe there are that gets tricky with the Brown Act because you're not allowed to discuss it among yourselves, but at least you'd all hear the recommendation. Or 3, you could have a spot on your consent agenda where recommendations from committees would be listed on consent. It would, of course, give you the opportunity, or the public, the opportunity to pull it off consent and discuss it. But at least you would have all heard the same thing at the same time. So I guess I'm suggesting one of those courses of action or a different one so that the recommendation gets to all of you and not just to the liaison and the city manager. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Welcome.
That's Shamas. I am on the Traffic Safety Committee. So I appreciate this effort because it's frustrating to be on this committee and not have any kind of formal way to promote or to make recommendations to the council. Mr. Melio is our liaison and he comes every meeting. And we appreciate that. But it does seem to me to be kind of backwards, like, shouldn't a representative from our commission be coming to the council and making this any kind of recommendation that the council or that the commission comes up with? I like the idea of a form because I think we need a form to kind of give us parameters. Do we want to, would we like this to be put on the agenda for discussion? Or, but I really like the idea of a form and I hope that our commission will have a chance to look at it and discuss it and see what else maybe we would want to see on that form. But I do feel like, I don't know if Mr. Emilio comes to you guys and say, hey, here's what the traffic commission is thinking. So I just feel like we need to reverse that, at least in our, how the commission is put together. And the other thing I would recommend for the council is just to look at your, I was handed, when I first got on, I've only been on a year, a little over a year, and I was handed the handbook. So I think I'm the only one that's read that handbook. But anyway, but if you look through that handbook, there's a lot of stuff in there that you probably want to clean up a little or make adjustments to. So, because I know that the mayor comes to some of our meetings too, and when he heard that we had put together some goals for the commission, he said, oh, well, I don't know. Should you be doing that on your own? Or so there is that disconnect. And we should be looking at that handbook to see like, okay, what specifics should we be doing and how should we be doing them? And what's there is kind of vague. You'll see that. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Sally Moore. I think years back, we would have someone come from the boards or commissions and give a little report to you. And I think that's great. I do know that you get the minutes, but they're about 2 or 3 months behind simply because they have to be approved at the one meeting. They talk about it, they approve the minutes, the next one, and then they're sent to the council. And sometimes that delay really makes a big difference on some of your decisions. So again, I think maybe the consent agenda might be a good thing or some way to speed up the process. Thank you.
Thank you. Any virtual comment?
Carolina Garcia.
Thank you very much. Mayor Peak, thank you so much for bringing this forward and creating that form. For many years, I have served on either a board or a commission or a committee, and that has always seemed to be the crux of how do we get our message to the city council. So I'm glad that there hopefully will be a mechanism in place that serves that purpose. I think also as part of the request or suggestion that the BCCs document which of the city's goals or values or mission, the vision that their particular recommendation may meet. I think that would add credibility to what they are going to be presenting to you in that with what you as the city council are attempting to achieve. Also, I like the idea of the consent agenda, but I also like the idea of of a member of BCC appearing before you, because I think it's important that you see who it is that's serving, as the individual that's been appointed. And it just, in my opinion, it gives, I don't know, credibility, to what's being presented to you, and allows the public to see, who it is that's serving on the BCC. Anyway, okay, well, that's all I have to say. So thank you very much. I support it. Thank you.
Lisa Chandler.
Okay, I just got the unmute signal. Okay, well, it's been interesting to listen to the comments because I had a comment, but I seem to have not really understood. I don't see the connection between the agenda report and the form myself, but that's just me. I do think it's really important. I'm so glad the mayor's brought this forward because I do think it's really important to have a very clear process for the boards, committees, and commissions to follow, as well as staff and the council liaisons, and for the public to know how it works. So I like definitely the idea that the commission chair or whoever the board or commission would choose present the recommendation to council, because very often what you read on paper, just everybody develops their own idea of what it says, and it didn't really mean that at all. So it would be good to have someone representing the board or commission come and present it. And I know BNRC has had some recommendations over the past several years that they've wanted to bring forward, and we're kind of frustrated in that not working out so well. So I think this is a great idea and it's really important, but it sounds like maybe it could be fine-tuned, maybe working with some board and commission members or what have you. Thank you.
Jane Haynes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. I hope you pass this proposal. Currently, the staff's consultant's report at the BNRC with respect to the Monarch Grove Secretary is sent to for council approval based on the claim it was approved by the BNRC. But the BNRC hasn't taken any action, no motion, no vote. And so this is sent up without paying any attention to what the comments have been. This proposal would require a hearing and a vote. That's why I'm so enthusiastic about it. The BNRC would have to listen to what the public said, and afterwards make their vote based on what they've heard and what they believe. And this proposal makes the recommendations have to be in writing and cite facts like dates when the public hearings took place. That is what I call transparency. It is not the way that I've seen the system work in the past, but I think it's a tremendous step forward, and I'm very enthusiastic about it. And I so much appreciate someone coming up with it, and I hope you pass it.
Thank you. Mayor and council members, I think it's a very good beginning. And I will say a beginning because it does need some fine tuning. I like what Don Murphy suggested of just filling out the form, presenting it at council, but sending it to all the council. If that doesn't violate the Brown Act, because every one of the council would have it, rather than just the liaison, because as we know, some liaisons are better than others, and some actually do a report and some don't. And it's sort of like it would be really good to have it just go to council and be presented too. I like the idea of someone from that commission presenting it to council all at the same time, and you all have the copy of that report that is filled out and adopted by the committee. So, I don't think it should rely on a council liaison to present it or anyway, I think it's very important and it is a good step forward and opens lines of communication and makes it more transparent. Yes, because too much gets lost in the abyss of reinterpretation. Thank you very much.
Roxy Lane.
Hello. I too would like to chime in and say that I agree so much with what everybody has said. This is one of the things, and I think the mayor knows this from the day he was voted into office. I was in front of him, how do we get things to council, and he says, well, you have to take it to the different BCCs and stuff. And it wasn't working. Things weren't moving from those of us that are involved in different things. And as you know, I've been involved in many of big events and volunteering, especially at the sanctuary and everything. And we have things we want to be heard. And so we take them, whether it's to the rec or the BNRC or the whatever. And I know that a few years ago, when I was still involved in trying to move things forward, as I think I've been absent from this because I've given up, but this is just a bright light, and I'm just so happy that this has come forward. But we used to take things to the BNRC about the Monarch Sanctuary, and the BNRC would have these very robust discussions, and they had a lot of great ideas, but they never made it to you because of a couple of things. Timing, you have to look at things, especially about the sanctuary, when the information has to get to them, they have to, work on the information, and they get the reports from staff for the plans, and then it's just a long process. And because it's not anything that's voted on, and they're just working on it, it never seems to make it to you. So everybody said, this is a great start, but I think you need to back up a little bit on information, and that the minutes aren't just action minutes, but also there's attached reports or something. And the BNRC has to come and make the report to the entire council. I think that's the only way it's going to be heard, discussed, and actually considered. So thank you for taking this on. I look forward to how it all rolls out, and I might even get engaged again for the good or the bad. So thank you very much.
No further hands raised, Mayor.
Council discussion, Council Member Coletti.
Well, thank you, Your Honor. We've discussed this as a council before. I think at our last meeting, or last time we did was at our April 17 meeting. And I've always felt that this is important. There's two things that I think are missing as far as our BCCs and having efficient communications and understanding of what the roles and responsibilities are. Is one, we don't have any onboarding process. So someone comes onto a BCC, there is the BCC handbook, but there's no onboarding process. And what I mean by that is there are foundational documents like our general plan, our local coastal program, all of the planning documents that, and council policies, et cetera. And someone has to expose the member to these documents. And it's up to them by the fact that they decided to volunteer for them to come up to speed. And the other thing is this communication path between our BCCs and council. And I think the root of this issue is that it's about direction. Our BCCs cannot direct staff, and staff can't, and conversely, staff can't direct the BCCs. It's up to the chair to implement an agenda. The staff, as I understand it, is there to facilitate the meeting. But the action taken cannot be to direct staff to perform some work product. That can happen through council by directing the city manager to do that. So there's this pathway, there's this, there's these lines of authority, as it were. And I think that is what fits in. That's where this fits in very nicely. So there's a couple ways you can get an item onto agenda. The city manager can put it on the agenda, and uniquely, to some extent, in Pacific Grove at least, council members can put items on the agenda. So what's nice about this proposal is that the interface to get things before council has to be a council member, because the BCCs can't direct the staff to do it. But council members can put things on the agenda, and council members are the representatives through the liaison function to the various BCCs. So I think it makes sense in that respect. Someone has to be an advocate to bring forward these ideas. And it's not like these things will be getting cranked out at every meeting. Hopefully not anyway. The idea is that these things are really important ideas. And obviously as volunteers, you spend a lot of time thinking about policies and programs that will benefit the city. And you want to see them, reach the canopy where they can grow. And that makes sense, but someone has to be the advocate to make that happen. And I think a liaison role fits that. And I'm willing to give it a shot. The problem with making a presentation, quite frankly, there's nothing, there's some ideas discussed, but in this case, it's a formal recommendation to do something. And then an agenda report will be developed by the liaison to put it on the council agenda so we can discuss the merits of it. And then council can then direct the city manager to take the action that so many of these BCCs want to see happen. So it's more work. There's another layer to process, but hey, council members can put anything on the agenda as it is now. This is just an opportunity to get input from the board, the BCC that you're the liaison to. So seems reasonable to me.
Councilmember Beck.
Thank you. And I agree with Councilmember Coletti on everything he mentioned. I think the bigger message too is that we value our BCCs. That's the bigger message, that they don't feel they're just out there, attending meetings and nothing's getting accomplished. So I like the value behind it. And I do agree with Chair Murphy that I think having the form filled out and having a spokesperson from the committee come forward and speak to us, I do like that idea. And I think it brings credibility to that chairperson as well, or whoever they decide to represent, or whoever represents. But I do think having it in writing, so the entire BCC, whichever one they're on, has reviewed it, they all agree to it, and it's coming forward. So I do like that idea, and thank you for bringing this forward.
Councilmember Paduri.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for identifying this and addressing it. I do believe that this process needs to be streamlined, and I've experienced it on the two commissions that I've been part of. I think the fundamentally speaking, the council liaison has always been like an observer kind of role, not necessarily an action oriented role. Because the intent from the boards and commissions was to provide advice, and staff technically would take that advice and kind of like work their way through that advice to council. But I think this just streamlines the entire process where you have a designated point of contact, that being the council liaison, to actually funnel all the items through that can be then be brought to council. So I'm on board with the idea. I don't think this, to me, the boards and commissions are all volunteers. And to me, their time is as important as is our time. And so if we put this on consent agenda, my fear is that it may get pulled, whatever be the case, but that form needs to reside publicly. But I don't want it to be part of the consent agenda, because then that puts an onus on the boards and commissions to be part of that meeting. And who knows when that consent agenda will be heard. So that's their time, and I value their time as much as I value ours. So my view is that potentially we can think up of ideas, or maybe the staff can come up with ideas. We could as well have something on a city webpage where all these forms reside, so people know what is happening with all other commissions if they choose to. So that could be kind of like embraced. I think it'll clear it up easily for council as well as for anybody that wishes to see what is happening behind the scenes. But I think the council person who is a representative can then make a decision where, when they agendize this item, to invite the chairperson or whoever it is from their commission to be part of the activity that is going on. So I think at the end of the day, I think it's makes the process much more streamlined. It does bring visibility into what is going on with boards and commissions, who actually have a lot of great advice to provide to council. I just think that they're not being heard as much as they want to be heard, and this is a great way to actually address it. So thank you.
Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I really appreciate this agenda item too, because since I've been on council, I recognize that the BCCs are advisory, but I'm often wondering, like, what are they working on? Because the minutes, naturally, because the style that we're using, they don't really provide any information without going back and watching the videos, which I unfortunately don't generally have time to do for all of them. So I like the idea of this. The one question that I would have is, you mentioned that so the form says council liaison, but you also mentioned that it potentially could go to any council member. And I kind of like the idea of that too, because if for any reason the liaison is busy or whatever, isn't able to bring it forward, does that give the option, kind of like Councilmember Coletti mentioned, technically any council member can bring it forward. So as long as the BCC members know that if they have any council member who wants to champion it, could come. But I think that any way that we can do to streamline it, and listening, I'm like, is consent agenda right? Because that way it doesn't take up extra time, because I know time is of the essence, but often things can kind of get passed by. But I think at the very least, even if it's consent agenda, it would bring it forward. As was mentioned, it could be pulled so that it could have discussion either by a council member or by a BCC member or the public, so we could find out more. But I really like the idea of getting a better feel for the recommendations, because I too think that, we value all the time and effort that our volunteers put in. They are the voice of our community, and the more that we can do to make their work feel valued, and that we can get the value of their efforts, I think that that's a really great way to move forward. So I would support it. And there were some ideas for maybe making it even more robust. So I really do like the idea of having that come onto our agendas, whether that be through the liaison seems like a logical step, but also maybe letting them know that there's the option to go to a different council member if for any reason the liaison isn't able to do so.
I'll just add, I'll circle back to some comments that Councilmember Coletti made about who can put things on council's agenda. Of course, the vast majority of items come from the city manager, some also from the city attorney, and then council. Now we have the chair, the committees have their minutes they're on consent, they're not acted on. And I think that's a great communication, but these are specific recommendations to be acted on. I don't think that we want committees to now have authority to put agenda items on for action. And so if it comes to consent agenda and it says, do something, well, I just don't think that's appropriate. Put it another way, I've heard a lot of committee discussion, great discussion, and some recommendations, but that discussion is all sort of within the bubble of the committee. And I've come away with, well, this isn't this recommendation, if you stand back and look at it from council perspective and the whole city perspective, it just doesn't work. It's like, I'll give a small example. The library board talked about recognizing special volunteers and putting a plaque up on the wall of the library. And afterwards, I was talking with Tom Oliver about this, and I go, well, not every committee has a wall, a building that you can put this on, and you have to think beyond just the library department, just a small example. So I think this sort of puts this puts the council liaison in a position to provide a broader perspective, council's perspective. The committee puts forth a recommendation that's going to cost $1 million. Well, then that council liaison, I'm assuming, is going to tell them, well, chances of that getting approved are slim, that sort of thing. Mayor Pro Tem Smith.
Thank you, Your Honor. Yeah, I just wanted to make a couple comments. I think this is definitely needed because in all the time that I've been up here, it has been apparent to me that it's hard to get things through to us, except for the legally required things that we've done on the planning commission and other boards. So I totally see the need for this. And when it came on the agenda, I was not surprised. And also, since we've done a lot of process oriented work in this term, this is another piece of that. The only thing I will say is I would say let's stay flexible with how we implement it. I like the form and everything, but there might be occasions where the council member may disagree with, and we don't want to put that person in the position of having to force something they disagree with. So I think that, in fact, you can't, because legally speaking, the council member is not a board member, is not a member of the board. They're a liaison to provide guidance. And so I think that it's a kind of a nuanced line to walk. As we've talked about it before, it's a very nuanced line to walk. But I think that if we stay flexible enough, the council member can identify, the liaison can identify the issue for staff in order to prepare whatever report has to be prepared. If they feel they want to prepare it themselves, they have that opportunity. But I think there's a little more to it than just, I think we're not going to figure it out tonight, but I think this is a really good start for it. And we're going to have to be flexible and work with each other on it and moving forward with it in order to make it effective. Because and I think the form is actually the most efficient way to do it, because it's putting something on record and it's being passed at the meeting, rather than having some kind of haphazard process in front of the council. So I think that's important that we do get this form in place. I just think the actual it's getting late. I'm sorry. The imposition of how we do it, the implementation of how we do it, might need a little bit more thinking and maybe even going through it a couple times.
Councilmember Emilio.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we have to go with this. I think it's part of transparency, part of what we want as a city council. And it may have to be tweaked later, but I'm willing to make a motion to approve the resolution. Okay. A motion to approve the resolution amending policy 00-5 to add section 7 regarding recommendation of boards, committees, and commissions, and The second motion is to approve the protocol for recommendations to the city council, board, committees, and commissions.
You can combine, that's all one motion as I understood it.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, Councilmember Emilio on the first and Councilmember Pedori on the second. Any further comments? And the form is, Mr. Mogensen provided, update on the form, so I think it's ready to go.
Yeah, we can make that a form available tomorrow if you'd like.
It's in a PDF, so, all right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, item 13B. Mr. Mogensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Actually, we're going to hear tonight from City Clerk Sandra Crandall.
Thank you. Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council, staff, and members of the public. Tonight before you is the annual League of California Cities Conference Voting Delegate and Alternates discussion. So as you know, the League of California Cities will hold its 2024 annual conference from October 16th through the 18th in Long Beach. In the fall, during the conference business meeting, the authorized delegate from the city may represent the city's interest to vote on and approve league policy. The league requires each city seeking to vote on matters to authorize by resolution its mayor or other elected officials to formally represent the city, participate in the business meeting, and vote on behalf of the city. Cal Cities considers and acts on resolutions that establish Cal Cities policies. And those policy issues are determined by the league board, usually in the late summer, at which time when they're sent to staff, we will return to council for further direction. So tonight's recommendation is to discuss, designate, and adopt by resolution a voting delegate and up to 2 alternates to represent the city on policy matters at the annual conference in October. That concludes staff report. Thank you. I see no one in person or online.
Council discussion. Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
I plan to be attending, so if we need a volunteer, I will volunteer. I don't know how many people are going.
Who else is attending? Attendance is mandatory if you're going to be a voting delegate. It is in person. Councilmember Beck, were you about to?
Oh, I was just going to ask for a raise of hands on who's attending, so we
Yeah.
can make that decision.
I think Mayor Pro Tem Smith has just voted himself in as the voting delegate, the sole voting delegate. Because let's just confirm, no one else on council is going to the league conference this year, right? Long Beach. All right. I'm
Learn how to surf.
So I will move to, it says discussed. I'll move to have Mayor Pro Tem Nick Smith be our voting delegate at the League of California Cities Annual Convention in Long Beach.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And that brings us to the end of our agenda. Thank you to the public for your participation, for staff and my colleagues. Thank you very much. Have a good evening. Meeting adjourned.
ECC item took a little.
Wow.